Hello, good day, and welcome to the JB Font channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here. The JB Font channel is available on all major podcast platforms like Anchor, Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, so you can subscribe to me there. I'm also part of the Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you can find me on the JB Show on Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern, as well as RBN Live on Tuesdays at 4, and the Sabi and JB Show on Thursdays at 6. Find me on my regular live streams on Tuesdays at 2 here on this channel. And if you are new, please make sure to hit that like button. That actually pushes me out in the algorithm, which is very much appreciated. Also, just a thank you to all the members, patrons on Patreon and Coffee, and people who also give me mutual aid via various platforms. Thank you so very much for all that you do. And thank you so much to the patrons, especially because without you guys, I would not be able to do this, which is very important. So, of course, we're doing, another reading out of Assata Shakur's Autobiography. We're jumping into chapter 7. And the best part is I'm reading the entire chapter this time. It's a little bit shorter, so I don't have as much to read. So that's one of the reasons why I'm reading the entirety of chapter 7. So this is actually going to be it's deep. It has some highs and lows in this chapter. And I am pretty excited to get into it. And we're, just like each chapter, we go from, Assata at the modern time, and then we go back in time to her childhood, and then back and forth. And that's basically how it's been throughout the book. So we're going to be starting in chapter 7, which is on page 118. And we'll be reading until we get to chapter 8. So this is actually going to be a really good one. And I just, this actually speaks to something that a lot of women go through. That a lot of us men, particularly cis men, we don't really know. We really don't know the ins and outs and the actual feeling. And so Assata actually gives us a good synopsis of how it really is, how it feels, in her womanhood, while juggling that with being incarcerated. So this is actually a really good gauge of how women go through. And so I appreciate her words in this. And so I think you will too. So when we start on chapter 7, page 118 of Assata Shakur's Autobiography. Okay. Kamal and I were acquitted in the bank robbery trial of the Southern District of New York on January 28, 1973. And on the following day, I was returned to New Jersey. When I arrived at the Morristown jail, there was a clump of reporters and photographers standing around. Morristown looked just like a small town USA. The jail was an ugly brown building attached to the courthouse. Sorry, it was an ugly building attached to a courthouse. When I said brown, for some reason I thought brown. Sorry. There was a few other women in the jail, and I was kept away from them. The only time I saw them was when I was being taken to or from my cell. They all appeared to be white, although I found out later that one was black. The guards were all women, as old as the hills, and they had been working at the jail for an eternity. There was a television and radio in the cell, and it had been so long since I'd been able to watch the news on television or listen to static-free radio station that I went crazy. And I had turned into a crochet fiend. My poor mother was the unfortunate recipient of my early creations. Brave, devoted person that she was, she thought they were pure genius. We learned there were few, if any, black jurors on the panel for the new trial. The news was depressing, The panel was selected from the voting rolls, and since candidates running for office seldom represent the interest of Black and poor people, Blacks and poor didn't vote. But failing to vote means that they don't sit on juries. Any chance that we would receive something even remotely resembling a fair trial was slim. We decided to try to have the trial removed to federal court. The chance of the feds taking over was slim, but it was worth a try. If the trial were held in the federal court in Newark, at least we'd be assured of a few more Black jurors on the jury panel. There were countless joint legal meetings, countless strategy sessions, and countless court appearances. My first look at the Morris County jury panel flung me into terrible depression. There were only 2 or 3 Black jurors on each panel, and they looked like extras in a soap opera. As a matter of fact, the whole jury panel looked like the escapees from a soap opera. They dressed differently and had a whole different air about them than New York people. Morristown was supposed to be one of the 10 richest counties in the country. And looking at these people, I believed it. I could just see trying to explain to them what poor Black people in big cities go through. How could they understand someone becoming a Black revolutionary? They had so little to revolt against. They had brought the American dream, lock, stock, and barrel, and seem unaware that for a majority of Black and third world people, the American dream is the American nightmare. It's interesting. When you are going through a system like this, there's this disconnect that many people, and really what Assata's describing is what we call the PMC, the professional managerial class. And a lot of them, they say, well, the system worked for me, it should work for you too. And so I don't understand why you just can't acquiesce to the system. Just do what the laws say. And why are you complaining so much? When in reality, they are the exception to the rule. They aren't the rule. And especially this happens with a lot of Black people, especially a lot of Black people who are middle to upper middle class. A lot of them think, well, all you got to do is just obey the law and just keep your head down and just work hard and you'll make it in this country. But in reality, there's so much more of us who are Black and poor and working poor in this country than them. They just don't realize it because they're in what we like to call a bubble. So when they see people like Assata Shakur and Sundiata, they're like, it worked for us. Why aren't you guys just embracing the system? When in reality, it doesn't work for everyone. And really the system is designed so that it only works for a tiny few. Evelyn and I have resolved our differences since she was back on the case. She, Ray Brown, and Charles McKinney, Sundiata's lawyer, worked hard on the motion to remove the trial to federal court. But after a hearing, the federal judge remanded the case back to the state court. He hadn't even listened to our arguments. So we were right back to where we had started, picking a jury in Morris County. Jury selection droned on tediously. Sundiata and I kept ourselves from falling asleep or from having nervous breakdowns by laughing and talking. Just seeing Sundiata every day was such a comfort to me. We made up all kinds of little games and jokes, especially guessing the answers of jurors would give in the trial judge's questions. We got to be pretty good at it. We looked at a person and pretty much knew what he was going to say. Some glared at us hatefully while they waited to be called, as if they couldn't wait to give us their opinion that they were guilty, that we were guilty. They were so sure of exactly what happened. They recited detail after detail from the newspapers and TV. Were you hiding that night on the turnpike? I wanted to scream at them. I didn't see you. Others gave us crooked smiles in the hopes that we would think they sympathized with us and would leave them on the jury. But there was not one bigot in the courtroom. None of them said they had any prejudice against black people. Do you have any black friends? The judge asked. Of course, but when asked if they had ever invited black persons to their homes or been to a home of a black person, the answer was invariably no. On one panel, the judge asked everybody if they ever called a black person a nigger. They all said no, except for one woman who said, well, when I was a child, we used to say, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a nigger by the toe. After that, a whole bunch of them said the same thing. Sometimes their answers were so funny, they were a joke. I'm sorry, sometimes the answers were so phony, they were a joke. Except the joke was on us. Okay. So I used to say that, but I didn't say the N word. I said, okay, when I was taught, it was eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a tiger by the toe. They changed the words from nigger to tiger. They changed the words. So with that being said, I think the original one was the N word. That's wild, man. We used to do that by like choosing people. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a tiger by the toe. If he hollers, let him go. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. My mother told me to pick the very best one, and you are it. Or some people go, not it. But you know what I mean? It's crazy, man. The anti-blackness is up here in this country. Oh, man. One day, a man being questioned told the judge what he had read about the case in newspapers and we had heard on radio and TV. He tried to make it seem that he had just incidentally came across the news stories and that he had not really followed the case or paid much attention to it. Further, he denied having been affected by any of it. Have you ever read the book called Target Blue? Only a day or two before, the defense team had asked that question be included in their voir dire. Robert Daly, who at one time was the public relations and publicity director for the New York City Police Department, had written the book Target Blue. An excerpt from the book was coincidentally printed in the New York Magazine on almost the exact day our trial was to begin. One or two chapters were about the Black Liberation Army. The book was a collection of sensationalism, groundless accusations, and outright lies. The few facts that were in those two chapters were distorted beyond recognition. I was referred to by name. Daly implied that I had been responsible for the deaths of numerous policemen. He called me the soul of the Black Liberation Army, the mother hen that kept them fighting and kept them moving. According to the book, I had also robbed numerous banks and blew up a police car with a hand grenade during the police chase. Have you ever read Target Blue? The judge asked. Yes. Immediately, the defense team submitted requests to the judge that additional questions be asked. When did you read this book? As a matter of fact, I'm reading it now. Not only had he been reading the book, but he had it upstairs in the jury room. Although the defense team asked for an investigation, the judge refused. It was obvious that the man brought the book to court to show the other jurors and that they had discussed it. After a lot of arguments made by our lawyers, the judge agreed to dismiss that juror and others in the panel with whom he had been close. One day I was informed that the Nazi Party was demonstrating outside the court, marching up and down, complete with swastikas and brown uniforms and helmets. They carried "White Power," "Save our police," and death penalty placards. You know, it's funny. A lot of people will talk, especially a lot of Blue Lives Matter crowd will talk about um, how they're not racist, right? And they'll look at the police with almost like an apple in their eye. And the funny part is that a lot of white supremacists are also very pro-police. Why is that? A lot of people didn't know it, but they got more Nazis in Ku Klux Klan in Jersey than a little bit. Some of my friends call it up south. Lou Myers, who is one of my lawyers on this case, is from Mississippi. One day, in all earnestness, he told me he would rather try a case in Mississippi any day than try one in New Jersey. Yeah. I'm originally from Jersey, so the thing is there's a lot, especially in South Jersey. South Jersey is definitely like right-wing territory. Yeah, it's right-wing territory. Very small townish, rolling hills. Got a few farms out there. It's nice, it's beautiful, very beautiful. You know, if you head further east, you'll get around, Atlantic City. You head far west, then you'll head to Camden, which is where I'm originally from, and then you cross over the Ben Franklin Bridge, and you're in Philadelphia. So yeah, that's South Jersey. And if you want to head south, then you would just hit Delaware. So. I couldn't understand it. I was growing weaker and weaker. My energy seemed to have gone down the drain. All I wanted to do was sleep. I chided myself for trying to escape from reality instead of facing it. I had seen women in jail sleep their whole time away. I was afraid that was happening to me. I was so easily upset and reacted to everything in an exaggerated manner. My nerves were terrible. Every little thing affected me. All I did all day when there was no court was sleep, eat, watch television, and listen to the radio. I was eating like food was going out of style. This also convinced me that my nerves were getting bad. I have seen people in prison gain 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds eating out of nerves and boredom. It gets to the point where all you have to look forward to is the meals. And that in itself is pitiful because anyone who has ever been in prison knows how terrible the food is. Yet I was gulping that stuff down like it was mom's home cooking. It wasn't until I sat down one day to do my exercises that I really suspected that what could be wrong. I could barely get through sit-ups, 10 sit-ups. Everything added up. I didn't dare hope, but at the same time, deep down inside, I knew. As sure as my own name, I knew that I was pregnant. But what was I to do next? I knew I had to see the doctor, but what in the world was I going to say? I had been in prison for 8 months, and it would really be weird to say, hey, I think I'm pregnant. I wanted to know for sure whether or not I was or not. But if I wasn't, I didn't want the doctor to know my business, because if I was, it will only be a matter of time before the whole world would know. First thing the next morning, I saw the prison doctor. I told him all my symptoms, dropping hint after hint. He told me there was nothing to worry about, that I was just constipated. As time wore on, it became harder and harder to wake up in the morning. When the guards came to wake me for court, I would simply roll over and continue sleeping. They did everything to get me out of bed. They called, they threatened, they banged the bars, and anything else they could think of. Just don't come in the cell, I would tell them, feeling evil as the day is long. You come in here and you put your hands on me, and I'm going to take your head right off your shoulders. They must have known I meant it, because they kept their distance until I was awake. I didn't care what they thought or said, as long as they didn't put their hands on me. I wanted them to leave me alone. All I wanted to do was sleep. I walked into court whenever I got up, no matter what time it was. The judge would go on about how my lateness and admonish my lawyers for not having me in court on time. But it was hopeless. I didn't care what the judge said, what the guards said, or what anybody said. All I wanted to do was sleep. I told Sendiata and one or two of the lawyers that I thought I was pregnant. They looked at me blankly, puzzled, as if I had an overactive imagination. Each day I felt more and more weird. I felt fragile and sick. I went back to the prison doctor, dropping more and more hints. I repeated my symptoms: queasy stomach, queasy stomach getting bigger, sick in the mornings, sleep all the time, etc. But he still didn't get the message. And I kept telling me the stuff about intestinal disorder. I didn't know what to do next. One day I woke up and I could hardly move. I was sick as a dog and dizzy to boot. I got up for a minute, then sank back down on the cot, holding on for dear life. They called the prison doctor. I repeated my symptoms again, and this time he ordered some tests. He asked for a urine specimen. I was sure that he had sent for a pregnancy test. I waited a few days and heard nothing. The nurse came and asked me for more urine. I was certain this meant the pregnancy test was positive, and they were retesting just to be sure. I gave her the urine sample and waited. When the doctor called me into his office, I knew he was going to tell me I was pregnant. Instead, he was smug and acted really on the stupid side. He kept making snide little remarks, and I could tell he was trying to make fun of me. I asked him what was wrong with me, and he repeated the same old stuff about bowel disorder. Then he asked me some questions about my sex life. Ask your mama about her sex life, I said, and went out of his office, slamming the door. Later that day, Ray Brown and Evelyn came to see me. Ray was in a jovial mood, laughing his head off. Well, you really did it this time. I didn't know what we were going to do with you. His Honor is going to give you a strong reprimand for getting pregnant during this trial. You mean I'm really pregnant? It was in the doctor's report to the judge. Did you know? No, I told him. I was just in that slimy bastard's office this morning. He told me I had something wrong with my intestines. He's pulling your leg, Ray said. They did 2 or 3 pregnancy tests on you, and they all came back positive. You're pregnant, all right. I can't believe it. Evelyn was in a state of shock. It's something, she said. Then she looked into space for a long time. It's something. Judge Bachman's having a fit, Ray said. I hear the FBI is going to conduct an investigation to determine how you got pregnant. You see, when a man and woman really, really love each other, I would have said that to the FBI. I would have been like, well, see, this is the, and this is the. Imagine trying to explain how procreation happens to an FBI agent. Like, how did this happen? Well, I can explain it to you if you like. And have you ever had sex education class? No? Oh, gosh. That's just me being silly. Well, they better not try to come around me asking no questions, I told them. I'll tell them that this baby was sent by the Black Creator to liberate Black people. I'll tell them that this baby is the new Black Messiah, conceived in a holy way, come to lead our people to freedom and justice and to create a new Black nation. Sundiata and McKinney had joined us. Sundiata was elated. He couldn't get over it. He sat there grinning and slapping his knee. I think it's beautiful, he kept saying. I think it's absolutely beautiful. Everyone was in a jubilant mood. I was glad. I hadn't known how they react. It's amazing, Evelyn said. Out of all this misery, a new life is conceived. I was caught up in the mood, but I couldn't wait to get off alone in my cell to think about this. What had seemed like a remote dream was coming true. A baby. My mind was jumping and dancing. I spent the next few days in a virtual daze, a joyous daze. A person was inside of me, someone who was going to grow up to walk and talk and to laugh and love. To me, it was the miracle of all miracles and deeply spiritual. The odds against this baby being conceived were so great, it boggled my mind, and yet it was happening. It seemed so right, so beautiful, in surroundings that were so ugly. I was filled with emotion. Already, I was deeply in love with this child. Already, I talked to it and worried about it and wondered how it was feeling and what it was thinking. I would lie in my cell wondering about his or her life, wondering what kind of life it would have, what kind of people it would love, and what kind of values it would have, and what it would think all the madness that was around, what it think of all the madness that was around it. Sometimes I felt so helplessly protective, wondering when my baby will be called a nigger for the first time, wondering when the full horror of degradation of being black in America would descend on my baby. How many wolves hid behind the bushes to eat my child? Have you ever had to have the talk if you're white? Have you ever had to sit down with your kid, especially if your kid was a male, and said, this is how you have to act when police come around? Black people have to do that. We all have to have that talk. There's some conversations that really you just don't have that much of when you're white. When you're black, these conversations have to happen in order to preserve yourself alive. That's the difference. But there were so many happy things that I thought about too. I wondered When would be the first time my child would sit down and seriously appreciate the glory of a sunset and marvel at the wonders of nature? Or when he or she would smack lips and lick fingers over sweet potato pie, or kiss strawberries and drink lemonade? Strawberry lemonade for the win. Strawberry lemonade for the win. Just saying. It always intrigued me how the world can be so beautiful and so ugly at the same time. I want it with all my being for my baby to experience the many types and sides of love and friendship, to know and understand selflessness and generosity, struggle and sacrifice, honesty, courage, and so many of the sentiments that have given me strength and have made my life worth living. And these days, I was in such a state of sensitivity and thought that I barely noticed what was going on around me. The next time my mother came to see me, my sister with her, I was so happy to see them both. When I say see, it is something of an overstatement because in Morristown jail, there are little holes through which you are supposed to talk, but to make yourself heard, you are obliged to shout. "Honey, you look pale," my mother shouted. "Mommy, I'm pregnant." "What is it, honey?" "I'm pregnant, Mommy." My mother smiled blandly. I repeated myself and she began to laugh. "How many months are you?" "No, seriously, Mommy, I'm pregnant." "Well, so am I," my mother said, this time laughing heartily. "I think it was my hysterectomy that caused it." "No, Mommy," I pleaded. "You don't understand. I'm pregnant. I'm not joking." "Who's joking, honey?" "Pregnancy is a serious matter," she said, trying to keep a straight face, "especially when the baby is born under immaculate conception and God is the father." She and my sister were having a giggle fit. "What are you going to name the baby?" my sister added. "Jesus?" They just carried on. The more I insisted I was pregnant, the more they laughed and cracked jokes. But finally, my mother stopped laughing. "Are you really pregnant?" I told her that it happened in the court and that Kamal was the father. "How do you feel?" "Actually, kind of funny," I told her. "I can barely move and I'm just so tired." In the visiting room of the prisoner's side, there were no chairs, so you had to stand up and talk. I was so tired, I just couldn't stand it any longer. I sat down on the floor, leaning on the wall behind me so that they can see me. I couldn't see them, but we shouted at each other until the visit was over. I went up to my cell after the visit and ended and immediately fell out. My mother went to the warden to complain about their refusal to provide chairs. The next day, Evelyn came to see me. "Your mother called me last night all the way from Morristown as soon as she left you. She was worried to death that, with all you've been through, you've finally been driven crazy. I told her not to worry, that you are, in fact, pregnant. I think that she's in a state of shock. So is your sister. It's all over the papers. I brought them for you." I couldn't believe it. Sure enough, they were in the articles. The one in the New York Daily News, I remember, was especially sordid. All the papers speculated about who the father was and how I managed to become pregnant in jail. One of them hinted that a prison guard was the father. "I'm sick, Auntie. I feel awful." "Well, that's what happens when you're pregnant. You get morning sickness and all sorts of other strange ailments. It's only normal." "Maybe you're right, but I'm having these pains down here," I told her, pointing where the pains were, "and I can barely stand up." She told me to go see the doctor, and I told her how the doctor had acted. "Well, go see him anyways, and have him examine you thoroughly. Meanwhile, I'll try to have you seen by a private gynecologist as soon as possible. I'll probably have to go to court." She promised that she would do all she could to get an outside doctor, and I went upstairs to see the jail doctor. Why did you lie to me and tell me the junk about bowel disorder?" was the first thing I asked him. Well, you lied. I just figured I'd get back at you. Anyway, you found out like I knew you would. That doctor's such an ass. Golly. I told him about my pains and he examined me. What's wrong? I asked anxiously. There's a chance you could be threatening to abort. What? I practically screamed. There's a chance that you're going to abort? I don't want no abortion. He cried out. I cried out. It's probably the best you could. I'm sorry. It's probably the best course you could take now, and I'd recommend it. But that's not what I was talking about. I said that there was a chance you could spontaneously abort, have a miscarriage. Oh no! What are you going to do? Relax. There's probably nothing serious. There's nothing much to worry about. What do you mean nothing much to worry about? I want this baby. Well, I can't force you to do anything, but my advice is to have an abortion. It'll be better for you and for everyone else. I don't want nobody's abortion. And what are you going to do about this miscarriage thing? Isn't there something you can give me to keep me from having a miscarriage? Isn't there something that I can take to make sure I don't lose this baby? No, there's nothing I can do now. We have to wait and see what happens. What do you mean, wait and see what happens? If I have a miscarriage, then it'll be too late. Can't you call a gynecologist? No, there's nothing I can do right now. You mean there's nothing you will do right now, don't you? Take it any way you want to. Won't you at least call a gynecologist and see me? You're not special in this area. I don't need you to tell me what my specialties are, he said angrily. It will be best for everybody concerned if you have an abortion, no matter which way you have it. This guy is an ass. Just who is everybody concerned? Don't you worry about it. My advice to you is that you should go to your cell and lie down. Just lie down and rest your mind. Just lie down and stay off your feet. And if you go to the bathroom and see a lump in the toilet, don't flush it. It's your baby. I raced out of his office, and when I got to my cell, I lay on the cot crying. I was worried to death. As far as I could see, they were out to kill my baby. I couldn't lose this baby now. Not now. It was meant to be. This baby was our hope for the future. And I tried to calm myself. I didn't want the baby to feel my anguish. Finally, I fell asleep. The next morning, I waited anxiously for Evelyn and Ray Brown. Ray came first. I told him what had happened. Please, I begged, get a doctor we can trust to see me today. I'll try to get one as soon as I can, Ray assured me. I'll have to make some phone calls. Then I'll have to talk to a judge. He's having a fit, you know. He wants to resume trial today. Don't worry. Everything's going to be all right. Ray and Evelyn came back in about an hour. Don't worry, they told me. The trial has been postponed until there is a report from our doctor. The judge permitted you to be examined by your own gynecologist, and he's coming this afternoon. So cheer up. They did their best to take my mind off of everything and to make me feel better. That day, I felt worse than ever before. Is the doctor black? No, he's a Ku Klux Klan doctor, Ray Brown joked. I felt like my insides were going to drop out the floor at any time. Ray went outside to meet the doctor and came back followed by a tall, brown-skinned man. The man sure as hell didn't look like no doctor. He looked like Mr. Superfly himself. He had on a long fur coat, a jumpsuit, and platform shoes. When I looked into his face, I was reassured. He was kind and very self-assured. He was gentle when he examined me, and I was truly grateful. He asked a whole lot of questions in a careful, painstaking manner. I was really impressed. Would you tell me your name again? I asked him, ashamed that I had forgotten it. Sure, that's an easy order. Ernest Wyman Garrett. He practiced in Newark, and there was an air of Newark about him. I liked him instantly. He was one of those rare breed of black professionals who hadn't lost contact with the masses of black people. He didn't have one trace of the affected bourgeoisie speech and mannerisms that are so popular among the black middle class. That's another thing. A lot of black middle class people, they have that air about them that is like there's this um there's this classist type of elitism that some of them have, especially over those of us who are black and poor or black and just working poor. So classism happens in the black community too. Definitely. I waited nervously for the verdict. There's no doubt about it. You were pregnant, but I found blood in the vaginal canal, which can be a sign that something is wrong. There's a possibility that you are threatening to abort. This doesn't mean you're going to have a miscarriage. The chances are good that you won't. The odds and the medical statistics are in your favor. He explained the different possibilities and the treatment that he was prescribing. I asked a million questions. When he left, I felt a whole lot better, just knowing that there was someone I could trust taking care of me and the baby. The days that followed are blurry in my mind. Most of the time I slept. The warden and the sheriff and the powers that were didn't like the idea of me having my own doctor. In their minds, the jailhouse quack house doctor was good enough for me. And the fact that Dr. Garrett was black infuriated them. They refused to let him examine me unless a white doctor hired by the state was present. And for the report to the judge, the white doctor had to examine me. Fortunately, he agreed with my doctor's findings. There was a lot of activity going on around me that I didn't understand. I was too out of it to try. I could see, though, that Evelyn and Ray were worried. I wanted to help them, to get to the bottom of what was happening, but I just didn't have the energy. About 2 days after his first visit, Dr. Garrett came in to visit me. When he finished examining me, he said, "Assata, I don't want to worry you, but I think you should be hospitalized. It's nothing serious, strictly precautionary measure. You're in no condition to proceed with this trial. You need a few weeks of complete bed rest. There's a possibility the judge will try to push you into that trial right away without regard for your medical condition. Assata, there's no way we are going to let that happen. I am prepared to fight all the way for your right as a human being to receive decent medical care and for your baby to be born healthy. I'm doing the same for you as I would for any other patient. You should be hospitalized. There isn't a responsible doctor in the world who wouldn't agree with that opinion, and I'm prepared to testify in any court that to deny you proper medical care will be tantamount to committing murder. I will be going in a very short time to give my medical report to your condition to the judge. I will do my best to convince them of the seriousness of this matter. I think he'll listen to reason. I'm sure the judge will go along with the findings of 2 board-certified gynecologists. But if worse comes to worst, and the judge denies our motion, I will see to it personally that this jail and the courtroom are surrounded by the right to life people by tomorrow morning." That's a doctor. I was too shocked to say much more than thank you. I was scared to death for my baby, but I knew that everything was being done, and that it was a load off my mind. I got dressed and waited for them to come take me to court. I wanted to hear what was going on. When they didn't come for me, I became worried. What's going on? Why weren't they bringing me to court? Why are they taking so long? What were they going to do? Were they going to make me go to trial like this? What were they planning to do? Evelyn and Ray came in, strutting and beaming. I knew everything was going to be all right. What happened? Why didn't they take me to court? You're too sick to go to court, Evelyn laughed. Haven't you heard that they don't let pregnant women into court? They figure it's a disease and they're afraid everybody will catch it. We felt it was much better for you not to be moved. It went fine. They'll be taking you to the hospital as soon as they can make arrangements. Dr. Garrett did a great job. After that speech, there was no way the judge could force you to go to trial in your condition. The trial has been severed, and Sundiata will go on with the trial alone. What? I exclaimed. We had agreed that we will be tried together. Why can't they wait until I'm better? Now, Assata, you know they're not going to wait for you to have your baby to try Sundiata. They claim that being here in Morristown is costing them a fortune. It would be cheaper to try us together, I said. Well, I can't at least see Sundiata and say goodbye to him. We'll try, they said. But we doubt if we doubt if there will be a time or if the sheriff will consent to it. I'm going to miss Sundiata. Yes, we know. Later, they put me on a stretcher and wheeled me to an ambulance. Don't worry, I told the baby. You're going to be all right. A poem on page 130. It says, it's entitled Love. Love is a contraband in hell, because love is an acid that eats away bars. But you, me, and tomorrow hold hands and make vows that struggle will multiply. The hacksaw has 2 blades. The shotgun has 2 barrels. We are pregnant with freedom. We are a conspiracy. That's it for chapter 7. What'd you think? That prison doctor, I can't say what I really want to say, but you know exactly what I would want to do. That doctor just, shame on him. Shame. And so, yeah, I honestly just, I can't wait to get into the next chapter, chapter 8. This is going to be a good one. I'm almost I think I'm about the halfway point. I'm at the halfway point of Assata Shakur's book. Pretty awesome, I had to say. But man, this was interesting. You know, her experience with pregnancy while being in prison, that's mind-boggling, man. So, yeah. So, I'll be getting into chapter 8. I'm going to try to push that forward soon because I know I've been kind of slacking on the reading a little bit. So, I appreciate you guys, being patient with me. Thank you for that, by the way. And so, I'll be getting to that. As well as I'll be talking about news stories on Tuesday. And, you guys can catch me on Tuesdays at 2. Also, thanks to all the patrons on Patreon and Coffee. Thank you so much. Thanks to all the members as well. We do have memberships, so thank you so very much to everyone. And look, thanks for participating in watching this Assata reading. Because, we try to get some revolutionary reading from different people. I wanted to do Assata Shakur, and I'm glad that I'm doing it. And I'm just trying to think of, because I'm trying to make sure that I do, women revolutionaries, because their perspective is unique and important. And I want to make sure that I have that as well. So I'm trying to think of the next woman that I can do. I know Noah from Midwestern Marks. I know that he gave me a recommendation. I'm going to try to remember which one he told me. I forgot the name. It wasn't Rosa Luxemburg. It was somebody else. I forgot her name. But I'll get into that after Assata Shakur's book, because I want to make sure that I read her book. I read another a book by a woman who writes theory, and it's a revolutionary in those ways. So I want to make sure I do that. But I just want to thank you guys for watching. And look, have you liked the stream? Make sure to give me a like. And have you subscribed? I hope that you did, because that would be awesome. All right, everybody. Good to see you. Water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Reading is fundamental. And smile. Try to do something joyful today, because joy is revolutionary. Mwah. Forehead kisses. Love you. Oh, yeah.